Welcome to the Sevens List. The disappearance of the crew of the Mary Celeste in mid-Atlantic is a classic sea mystery. Over a century of speculation has brought us no nearer to knowing the truth. During the afternoon of December 4th, 1872, a 280-ton American brigantine was found rolling in the Atlantic swells some 590 miles west of Gibraltar, seaworthy but not a soul on board. The derelict's name was Mary Celeste, and she was to become a byword for maritime mystery. The Mary Celeste was originally built as the British ship Amazon in 1860 at Joshua Dewis's shipyard on Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia. With a length of 103 feet in her brigantine rig, she was similar to dozens of other reliable, medium-sized, deep-sea freighters plying the North Atlantic. Sadly, there was nothing reliable about the Amazon, other than a tendency to catastrophe. For 10 years, she suffered a series of disasters, including 2 collisions, a fire, and a near-fatal wreck. About 1870, she was brought by James H. Winchester, the founder of a New York shipping consortium. Winchester had her refitted, her hold and her cabin remodeled, and her bottom sheathed in new copper. By 1872, the Mary Celeste had been re-registered as an American vessel and was in the East River at Pier 44 in New York City, awaiting her crew and cargo. The first aboard was the captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs, and he had already held 3 successful commands with the Winchester Company, of which he was a shareholder. A temperate man, he wisely allowed no alcohol on his ship while at sea. Accompanying him on his first voyage in the Mary Celeste were his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter. By Saturday, November 2nd, 1872, the Mary Celeste cargo, 1,701 red oak barrels of denatured alcohol bound for Genoa, Italy, had been loaded aboard. Captain Briggs went ashore for a final meal with his friend Captain David Reed Morehouse, master of the British brigantine, the Degrada, which was laying alongside his ship, awaiting for cargo. The Sandy Hook Bay pilot boat towed the Mary Celeste downriver to an anchorage off Staten Island on November 5th, where she lay for 2 days waiting for a break in the weather. Finally, on November 7th, 1872, she sailed out into the Atlantic and into legend. On November 15th, the Degrada put to sea with a cargo of petroleum bound for Gibraltar. At 1 p.m. on December 4th, at a point about halfway between the Azores and the west coast of Spain, her helmsman spotted a brigantine with tattered sails. It was the Mary Celeste. Captain Morehouse eyed his friend's command through a telescope. She had some sails up, but they were unbraced and flapping. Nobody was at the wheel. When there was no reply to his calls, Morehouse sent his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, and 2 seamen to board the stricken vessel. She was totally deserted. In the mate's cabin, a chart showed the track of the vessel up to November 24th. The main log, along with the captain's log, sextant, and ship's papers, were missing, and the cradles that held the ship's lifeboat on top of the main hatch were empty. A strip of railing had apparently been removed to make it easier to launch the boat. Everything pointed to the crew having abandoned ship. But why? There was damage done to some of the sails and rigging, but this appeared to have occurred after the abandonment. One of the pumps had been drawn from the sounding well as if to test how much water there was in the bilges. The water was less than a foot deep, an acceptable level. Plates and cutlery were neatly stowed in the gallery, and the beds had been made, though an open skylight had let seawater into the cabin. Rough weather may have been anticipated, because some of the cabin's windows were battened with wood. On deck, 2 or 3 of the hatch covers had been removed from the main hold. The cargo was still on board, but the end of one of the barrels of alcohol had burst. DeVoe also noticed that the main peak halyard, a sturdy 100-foot rope, was broken, and a good deal of it was missing. Whatever had happened, it happened fast. Almost all of the 6-month supply of food and water remained on board, and among the many personal possessions left behind were tobacco pipes. A sailor might abandon ship, but rarely his pipe. Captain Morehouse ordered Oliver DeVoe and 2 seamen to patch up the Mary Celeste rigging. 2 days later, the brigantine sailed for Gibraltar, arriving on the night of December 12th. The Mary Celeste was immediately impounded by Frederick Solly Flood, Attorney General for Gibraltar. First, Flood accused some of the missing crew of having murdered the Briggs family in a drunken frenzy before abandoning ship. But it was a dry ship, apart from the cargo, and anyone drinking the denatured alcohol would have been crippled by sickness and blinded long before inebriation. Next, Flood accused Briggs and Morehouse of the crime of barratry, the deliberate defrauding of a ship owner, by rigging the whole mystery, planning it over their supper together the night before Briggs sailed. This was a gross libel of the known good characters of both captains. Apart from that, Briggs owned 1/3 share of the Winchester Company and would have been defrauding himself by undertaking such a plan. Flood's third and final explanation was that the crew of the De Grata had murdered the crew of the Mary Celeste in order to claim the salvage reward. This theory was dismissed by the court. Eventually, the inquiry came to a close, and Morehouse and his crew were awarded salvage money. The Mary Celeste completed its voyage to Genoa and was then sold by Winchester. After a dozen more years and at least as many owners, it was finally wrecked in Chesapeake Bay. Since then, many theories have been suggested to account for the mystery. It will probably never be solved, but one set of circumstances might fit the known facts. Transporting volatile liquids such as alcohol in those pre-tanker days was a risky business, and the hold of the Mary Celeste, newly rebuilt with a copper bottom, must have been almost airtight. A buildup of vapor may have caused one of the kegs to blow its top, which would have made a thunderous noise in that secluded space. In such a case, Briggs' first reaction would have been to check the bilges to see if the hull had been damaged, hence the drawn pump. Next, with a possible second explosion impending, his instinct may have been to launch a lifeboat to get his wife, child, and the crew out of harm's way, while he stayed aboard alone to investigate. He may have used the main peak halberd as a line between the lifeboat and the ship, but at that point a wind may have sprung up and the brigantine begun to sail away slowly. Unable to handle the ship by himself, Briggs would have tried to climb down the halyard to rejoin the others in the lifeboat. The halyard was either cut or came apart. The overloaded lifeboat was swamped, and the Mary Celeste sailed on. This story is improbable, but, to quote Sherlock Holmes, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever is left must be truth.